my children now. Mummy's with the maggots now.
Death has come to your little town, Sheriff. Well, hi there.
Hello, and welcome to Would You Die, the show where we only get a little mad sometimes. I'm Austin Torres.
And I'm Anneliese Petersmarck.
And today we are kicking off this brand new iteration, Italians. We are kicking off this brand new iteration of Would You Die, episode 1. Let's fucking go.
Let's fucking go.
This is Mommy March, and our first episode in this new era of Would You Die. We are talking about just one of the most iconic, not just iconic horror movies, just one of the iconic movies.
Correct, yeah.
Like it's Psycho, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because this is a new episode, or new format, if you don't know, if you haven't checked us out on social media, first of all, you absolutely should. It's Would You Die Podcast?
Would You Die Show.
Would You Die Show. I knew that too. Would You Die Show everywhere. We are going to be tackling a new topic every month and just finding some horror movies that fit that topic. So our first one, as Austin already mentioned, Mommy March. We're going to be tackling some of the horror movie mothers. Should be a really interesting month. Going to get deep into some pop psychology out here. It's going to be great.
Mommy issues.
Amazing.
Let's fucking go.
Let's do it.
But before we dive deep into this just just cinematic legend, what have you been watching? How's Lisa?
Lisa's great. Obviously been watching a lot of the movies on our list for Mommy March, getting ready for this month.
Hell yeah.
But outside of that, biggest movie that I watched recently was Shiva Baby.
Ooh.
Which I don't know if you've ever seen it. Have you seen that movie?
I haven't seen it. It's on my watch list. I hear great things.
Yes. So it's Rachel Sennett, and she is, she plays like a young Jewish girl. She's a college student, and she goes to this Shiva, which if you don't know what that is, it's like a Jewish funeral where you kind of have to, it's like the after funeral where you sit for a while and just stay with the family and everything and eat some good food and all of that. And exactly. Similar to Awake. Thank you, producer Jeremy. And she has to kind of hide her tracks because she runs into her sugar daddy and her ex-girlfriend. And her sugar daddy is married. So she kind of has to be incognito. It is, in my opinion, one of the greatest horror movies of 2020. It is just an absolutely... If you are scared of social situations that are a little awkward, this is going to be in the horror category for you. It may be a comedy for everyone else. For me, this was my nightmare. So
I shouldn't laugh at your nightmares, but...
they're funny.
Yeah, you said it funny.
Thank you. I'm hilarious.
For context, everyone, we are recording this January 27th, 2025.
Yes.
So, where did you watch Shiva Baby?
I watched it on Netflix, I believe. Yeah, I watched it on Netflix.
So, hopefully this is still on Netflix by the time you're listening to this in Mommy March. And if not...
It's also...
sorry.
Able to rent or buy on Amazon or Apple TV.
Cool. What I watched recently, pick for this episode, I watched Your Monster on HBO Max last night.
Tell me all about it.
It was fucking awesome. It stars Melissa Barrera, who's a horror queen, and it's about Melissa Barrera's character who goes through this horrible health crisis, and when she needs him the most, she gets dumped by her boyfriend. So the movie is about her, like, getting her mojo back, but what doesn't help is the fact that she finds a monster in her closet. And this is one of the most delightful, one of the most charming movies I've seen in a long time. It's a horror romantic comedy with a musical flair. It's everything I love about the movies.
I was going to say, that sounds exactly up my alley.
It is, and you need to watch it now.
That's going on my watch list right now.
So it's fantastic. I loved it. I put it on kind of late too. Like I put it on around 11 p.m. expecting to like fall asleep halfway through and finishing it like tonight. I watched the whole thing. It was fantastic. So I recommend people watch Your Monster. Lisa recommends Shiva Baby.
Absolutely.
And yeah, let's talk about little Alfred Hitchcock 1960 Psycho.
Yes, jump right in.
Let's jump right in. So, Lisa, what's Psycho about?
Psycho, just to give you a little quick synopsis, we start out with Marion Crane, who is a secretary, and she sees an opportunity to basically steal $40,000 from her employer so that she can go live happily with her boyfriend.
I gotta stop you right there for a second. We gotta talk about this. That motherfucker deserved it.
The employer, absolutely.
Yeah, he comes in with his fucking mustache and his fucking $40,000, and he walks around like, I don't buy happiness. I use my money to buy off unhappiness. And I'm like watching this movie, and I'm like, shut the fuck up.
There is a lot of one of the things that I think, and it doesn't necessarily fit exactly with our topic of the month, but one of the things that I notice in this movie a lot is that there's so much appeasing men as you go through the movie. Like, she very much tries to be pleasant and play respectability politics so as she doesn't get in trouble. And obviously doesn't end up working. But
that dude was a dick, though.
He was a dick.
I'm sorry. He deserved to have his $40,000 stolen. Completely
agree. He doesn't deserve to have $40,000, which at the time was like so much money.
Now,
I mean, it's still so much money.
My math is not the best, but 40,000 in 1960 time, I'm pretty sure is 263 billion.
I believe you.
So I went to school for film studies. Don't check my math.
I have a math minor. I believe you.
Hell yeah. So, anyways, I just wanted to interject and say Marion Crane did nothing wrong.
Correct. So she goes on the lam. She ends up kind of lost and at Bates Motel, where she runs into the very polite proprietor Norman Bates, who has a difficult relationship with his mother, shall we say.
I mean, I'll just pull off the Band-Aid right now. If you guys are listening to this episode and you haven't seen Psycho, this point on, there's going to be spoilers galore. And also, like, the movie came out in 1960. You should see Psycho.
Catch up.
Yeah, grow up, guys. But no, I get it. Like, how accessible is a film that's 1960, like, going to be 60 years old? It already is 60 years old.
Yeah, it is 60 years old.
It's going to turn 65 this year.
You would think not very, but I actually find it very accessible.
Okay.
I mean, I think that a lot of this movie, while some of it is definitely dated, a lot of it really translates pretty well to today in terms of, like I was talking about, the, like, appeasing men. So, like, even in the opening scene, she's with her boyfriend, and realistically, she loves him so much. Like, that's part of this. She really wants to just be with him, but due to, you know, the politics of the time, she's like, next time we meet, we really need to, like, go to my mother's house, do it all proper. Like, we really shouldn't be meeting in secret like this. And
well, he was going through a divorce, right?
Right, exactly. He was, at least at the beginning, he mentions paying alimony. So we assume that he has a divorce that's relatively recent, because she obviously hasn't gotten remarried yet. So that part, while a little bit dated in terms of, like, that wouldn't be seen as scandalous as much anymore, it's still, like, you know, people will talk if you're
Right.
visiting a very recently divorced or very recently out of a relationship guy. People always talk. And so I think that's still real. The creepy dude who flirts with you at work and you just kind of have to smile and nod so that you can't, like, you don't get in trouble. That's real.
And he's waving his money in her face. Like, fuck that dude.
Right. Even with Norman, I mean, he is obviously, we know ultimately, like, he becomes the mother and he is the villain. Shock.
What?
I know. At the beginning of the movie, even though he is kind and gentle seemingly, she can't say no to his offer for dinner. She's like, I'm very tired, and he's like, no, please. And
because
she's
he
like,
insists.
yeah, and she's like, I guess I'll stay. And so, like, while yes, maybe the outside dressing of the movie is a little bit dated, at least for women, I feel that the constant vigilance of, like, making sure that you are pleasant and kind and, like, understanding of men in your life, I think that is something that, like, modern women can definitely relate to.
For sure. Something I want to ask you really quick is, what is kind of like your history with Psycho?
So my history with Psycho is not as storied as some others. I actually haven't seen any of the sequels. I haven't seen Bates Motel. My only real, like, I had seen the original when I was in college, and my real fascination with it came when I found out that there was, like, it was based on, kind of loosely based on a true story. So that was kind of my, like, when I started to get more invested in Psycho.
Okay, that's cool. We'll talk a little bit more about the true story in a second.
For sure.
But
What about you?
Yeah, I also saw Psycho for the first time while I was in college. And I was going through my film studies program. I took a Alfred Hitchcock seminar.
Oh, that must have been so cool.
Dude, it was. It was the coolest class I will ever take. But, it's a whole semester of learning from a master of cinema. But I had never seen Psycho for whatever reason. The only Hitchcock movies I had seen before the class was Strangers on a Train, and The Birds. Everything else was like, I hadn't seen Rear Window yet, or Vertigo, North by Northwest, these classics. Rebecca ended up becoming one of my favorites. Rebecca fucking rules.
I haven't seen that one.
It fucking rules. But yeah, Psycho, it was my first time seeing it. And I knew, like, the shower scene.
Yeah, of course.
Because I've had seen Scream, and there's so many references to Psycho and Scream. And just pop culture, like The Simpsons had a really great homage to the shower scene. Maggie hits Homer with the hammer, I think, after watching Itchy and Scratchy, and they recreate the showers scene really well with the music and everything. But so I just being alive in pop culture.
Yeah.
I knew Psycho, but I didn't see the twist of him being the mother coming. So that blew my mind in Wells Hall.
That's amazing. You actually just reminded me that I do have more history with Psycho because of that. I was really obsessed before I even really got into horror as a genre. I got really obsessed with the show Scream Queens, which came out when we were in college.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen that show,
Is
but
that
it's got a crazy cast.
Emma Roberts?
Yeah, it's got Emma Roberts, Lea Michele, Ariana Grande, Keke Palmer is in that show.
Queen.
Yeah. And the dean of the college, actually, oh my gosh, what's his name? Twister's guy.
Glenn Powell?
Glenn Powell.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Like, this was his first
him.
role, was, like, in Scream Queens. It takes place at a college because it's a sorority horror.
Okay.
And the dean of the school is Jamie Lee Curtis. So, of course they did. Like, there was a lot of, like, referential stuff in that show, but...
For sure.
Of course they did the Psycho scene because of Jamie Lee Curtis being
Janet Leigh's daughter. Yeah.
So that was the first time, and that's when I found out about that, was from that scene, like watching that scene and like finding out after I watched it, like, oh, well, the reason they did that is because that's Janet Leigh's daughter. And so, yeah, I definitely had more, obviously, I knew about the shower scene before I watched Scream Queens even, but that was definitely the first time that I made that connection, so.
I love that. But yeah, Psycho's great ever since I first saw it. Taking that, I've seen it a couple times since, and every time it's just like, this is a good movie.
Yes, absolutely.
What's the one Harry Styles quote? Like, this movie feels like a movie.
It truly does feel like a movie. I feel like we're gonna get a lot of mileage out of that Harry Styles quote, honestly.
God bless.
I knew what he meant. That's my one defense of Harry Styles. I can't defend the movie, but I can defend that quote because I felt that.
And that's how I feel about Psycho. Psycho, it feels like a movie.
It's a movie that feels like a movie.
It truly, though, like, when I was watching it and rewatching it in prep for this, I went to do my notes fucking halfway through the movie. I just was watching it and I look at my notepad, I'm like, fuck, I didn't write anything during the second half.
Yeah, I definitely had to do a lot of, like, recapping when I was doing my notes because you just really get sucked in.
Yeah.
And, like, I think that's going to be a recurring problem as we do this podcast because we've picked such good movies. Like, we really have picked a lot of really fun ones. And so I feel like that happened with our second movie, too.
Oh, it did. I haven't watched.
We'll talk more about that when we get there. But
yeah, listen to our next episode next week, guys.
Yeah, find out.
Back to the Future. That's not the next episode. I was just... because like,
I was gonna say, what are you talking?
You can't listen to it right now because that's coming in the unless you're like
We have to go back.
We have to go
back to the future.
Bum bum bum. You know what movie feels like a movie?
That movie truly does feel like a movie.
Back to the Future.
Yeah.
That feels like a movie.
Oh, that does feel like a movie. People don't, like, grown adult men don't hang out with teenagers in movies anymore. You know what I mean?
What the fuck?
Like, that was just, like, a thing that they did back then. And I think that's beautiful.
We used to be a proper country.
No, we really did.
Thanks, Obama.
I don't know that joke has aged well.
A lot of things haven't aged well.
That's fair. We'll see where we are in March.
Psycho aged well.
Psycho really did age well.
That movie... It feels like no, that movie fucking rules.
Yeah.
We started mentioning how it's like true life inspired.
Yes. So
teach us.
Absolutely. So Ed Gein is a serial killer. Oh gosh, I can't remember the term for it, but he also he was a body snatcher. That's the term for it. He would dig up graves as well.
Is that what they're called?
I found that out yesterday.
What?
When I was doing research into this, they're called body snatchers.
You said body snatcher, and I'm like, that's an alien.
Like
what are you
Revenge
talking
of.
about? Yeah.
So Ed Gein was a serial killer, but a lot of his victims were really related to his relationship with his mother, Augusta Gein.
I thought you were going to say Augustus Gloop.
His mother, Augustus Gloop, she died tragically in a river of chocolate, and it really fucked him up. No, when he was growing up,
yeah,
Augusta was very much anti-woman. All women except for her were whores.
Oh, that's going to tie into next week.
Yeah. But, like, a lot of, like, distrust of, like, don't pay attention to them. When Ed was pretty young, they have this story, this recollection that Ed has of Augusta and Ed going to visit a man named Smith to purchase some straw for their animals. And Smith was beating a dog pretty violently, and a woman came out from inside the house to, like, scream at him to stop beating the dog, but Smith wouldn't stop. He beat the dog to death. And Augusta was upset, but she was not upset about the dog. She was upset at the fact that there was a woman inside of his house who he was not married to. And she referred to the woman as Smith's harlot. So very much, like, left Ed with little trust in women. other than herself, very devoted to her. She had a pretty awful paralyzing stroke after Ed's brother died and Ed's father died, so Ed was left as her sole caretaker, much like Norman is in the movie. When she died, one of his friends, acquaintances, I guess, was quoted as saying he lost his only friend and one true love, and he was absolutely alone in the world. When he started committing his murders and body snatching, he would dig up graves of women, and they would always look like his mother, to make paraphernalia like skin lamps and like other things, obviously very heavily inspired by the terrors of Nazi Germany, to make this paraphernalia. And he actually began to create a woman's suit so he could crawl into her skin.
So, for the horror cinephiles out there, Ed Gein is not just directly responsible for inspiring Norman Bates in Psycho, but as you can probably already tell, he is the basis for Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films, and Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs.
Yes. He is kind of known as all of those things, but I definitely think that in our particular month, it is really important to talk about his relationship with his mother. And why he was the inspiration for Norman.
Right. And in the time that Psycho came out, slasher movies didn't really exist.
No.
And Psycho, I think you can argue Psycho's the first slasher movie. There are other arguments to be made, like Peeping Tom, some people think Halloween is the first, but then also Texas Chainsaw precedes that one. Black Christmas does as well, but Psycho, I think, is like...
I think it's definitely the first mainstream one, for sure.
Right, if you don't consider it a slasher, because it's not like a... Halloween set the template.
Right, but it's like, for sure the, precursor.
Right, it's a proto-slasher at the very... But it's psychological horror, for sure.
Yes.
Which is funny, because it's easy to forget that, even though the movie's fucking called Psycho.
Yeah.
In the context of the time, Psycho's a very shocking movie. You know?
Absolutely. Especially considering you're dealing not only with the horror aspect of it, but you're also kind of dealing with the shock of multiple personalities and these very little explored psychological phenomenons at the time. Now we definitely have more understanding of dissociative identity disorder, which is what it's called now. And there's much more of a treatment, but at the time it was seen as so novel and it was very little researched that it was shocking to know that this was not only existed in the horror genre but also existed in real life to a much lesser extent, but still.
Yeah. And what's the most shocking thing about this movie was it showed a toilet being flushed.
I don't know what to say to that.
It's the first time in mainstream American cinema that a toilet was shown being flushed.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's a weird fact that you know.
I know it.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's definitely post-Hays Code. I don't know if one's been shown pre-Hays Code. I'm sure European cinema don't give a fuck.
That's fair.
But, yeah, in mainstream American cinema, mostly because of the Hays Code, that was the first time a toilet on screen was seen flushed.
That's a very fun fact.
Thank you. But yeah, Psycho pushed a lot of boundaries.
Yes. I think not least of all the boundary of talking about, perhaps for the first time, without directly naming it, the emotional incest between Norman and his mom.
So what does that mean?
So emotional incest is kind of a more recent psychology term.
Okay.
Where it generally happens between a parental figure and a child figure, and it's not actual like sexual feelings of like desire for this person, but it is kind of using them as like a romantic placebo almost. So like a lot of times a parent will, especially a single parent, who has been at least perceived slighted by their romantic partner, will project like feelings of dependency onto their child. So again, it's not romantic in nature, it's not sexual in nature, but it is just like treating your partner as like your emotional crutch, or even sometimes in this case your physical crutch of like needing them in the way that you would need a partner.
Gotcha.
And so it's very obvious, even though again we know the plot twist is that Norman's mom is long dead. And that he has kind of taken on this persona of the mother. We know that Norman's relationship with his mother when she was alive was very much like emotionally and physically dependent on him to be her caretaker.
Yeah.
So
we were kind of going through a bunch of stuff just now. Did we successfully transition into our mommy conversation?
I think we have.
Yay! It's my favorite time of the year where we talk about mommies.
That's weird. It's a weird thing you just said.
So, the reason why I wanted to do a month dedicated to our horror movie mommies is really I wanted to talk about Psycho.
Yeah, definitely.
And this just felt like the obvious... I mean, there are a lot of themes we can fit Psycho into.
Yes.
Early slashers, iconic plot twists, Hitchcock.
I feel almost as though, not to say like we're the first, like I'm not saying we're revolutionary and we're the first people to have talked about this, because like it was very purposeful the way that Hitchcock set up the relationship between Norm and his mother. But it feels like almost when conversations about Psycho happens, because it's so iconic and it's an early slasher and it is Hitchcock, a lot of those categories get talked about and explored a little bit more than like the relationship between Norman and his mom.
But what if we are the first people?
I mean, we can say we are, for sure.
Guys, let us know. Comment, like, subscribe.
I guess you'll have to listen to this whole podcast episode to find out if we say anything revolutionary. And if we don't, you can let us know. But, like, you have to listen to the whole thing first.
Exactly. Exactly. But, yeah. Mommies.
Mothers.
Now we're fancy.
So the big thing that I think we see, and the reason I bring up the emotional incest angle is because Mother really seeks control over Norman by trying to keep him away from other women. Like she very much presents other women as like they're tricksters, they're manipulative, they're going to try to, you know.
For clarification, are we talking about Norma Bates right now, or are we talking about the mother persona of Norman?
I think both, because I
because Norma was like that.
Right, exactly. I really believe, I mean, the scene that I'm thinking of right now would be the mother persona, right? It's the scene with Marion in the hotel. Norman goes inside and talks to his mother, quote unquote.
Right.
And she's like, no, she's not coming into my house. Like, she's manipulating you, that kind of thing.
Right.
So that is obviously his persona, but it is definitely coming from conversations that are implied to have happened in the past.
Right. And at the end of the movie, they have this whole exposition dump to explain to, like, the 1960 American audience what the fuck just happened.
Right, exactly.
Which is fair for the 1960 American audience who probably just learned what, like...
what, at the time, multiple personalities were?
Yeah, like how many people would know at that time, you know?
Exactly.
But something I kind of want to bring up, and we're talking about how Norma was controlling. Her name's Norma.
Right, exactly.
She named her son Norman. What the fuck?
I know. It's crazy. I mean, like, it's one of those things where it's like, you kind of see it on paper and you're like, oh yeah, how unique. Like most like young sons who are named after somebody are named after the father.
Right.
But when you know their relationship and their dynamic, it's very insidious of like projecting himself on or projecting herself onto him.
Right. And you said you haven't seen any of the sequels, but Psycho 4, that one kind of dives into it, and it has a prequel element to it. It mostly is a prequel. Mm-hmm. But it has bookends that star Anthony Perkins shortly before he passed, I think. Mm-hmm. Psycho 4 is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I do know, like, the general idea of what happens in all of the sequels.
Yeah.
But I've never seen it, so I'll definitely have to check that one out.
For a movie called Psycho 4, The Beginning, I think it's called Psycho 4, The Beginning.
I think you're right.
But for a movie called Psycho 4, it's way better than it has any right to be. Right. So I credit Mick Garris for that, who directed that. And then it stars, like I said, Anthony Perkins. In the bookends, Henry Thomas plays young Norman Bates, which is really interesting. So if you're listening, you don't know who Henry Thomas is, that is Elliot from E.T. Mm-hmm. And then he's part of the Flana fam now. He's in all of Mike Flanagan's works. Right. But yeah, that's kind of a great little role for him. And then Olivia Hussey, who just passed recently. Right. Queen for so many movies. I think most famously the 70s Romeo and Juliet, and then Black Christmas. Or was it the 60s?
It was the 60s.
Romeo and Juliet.
Late 60s.
Yeah, late 60s. So, but yeah, she plays Norma in that one.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Shouts out to my 9th grade class. We are currently reading Romeo and Juliet. We will be watching clips from that movie.
Hell yeah.
So.
Watching clips from Psycho 4, The Beginning.
You know it.
And then Bates Motel dives into their relationship too.
Right.
So.
I did want to point out just a couple of quotes that I pulled from the scene where they're eating dinner in the motel.
A boy's best friend is his mother.
Yeah, that's for sure one of them. I find that interesting because it's phrased in a way where it sounds like it's supposed to be like an idiom, like a quote that other people know.
He does say it like that, don't he?
He says, well, a boy's best friend is his mother. Like, almost like that's like a famous quote, like that people say. And it's not. But it does feel almost, it gives it the illusion of almost being like, that must have been something that Norma was saying to him.
Like he's been saying that all his life.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so that's really, like, disturbing. I mean, obviously that's a, like, very famous quote, but it is also something that I think the inflection of it is really interesting.
I never thought about it like that. Like, oh, yeah, this is something that everyone says, like, red and black, a friendly Jack. Red and yellow, a dangerous fellow.
Exactly. Yeah, or like...
You laughed during that. Do people not say that anymore?
No, they do. I didn't know where you were going with it.
Oh, okay.
The one I was thinking of and the one that I quote the most often is, red in the morning, sailors take warning. Red at night, sailors delight. And so I thought that's where you were going, and then you didn't go there, and I thought you were just saying it wrong, but you weren't. You were just saying a different thing.
I was talking about snakes.
Yeah. I was talking about the sky. That's not the same. Anyway, that's not the point.
But no, you're exactly right. Like, a boy's best friend is his mother.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other one is when they're talking about, like, the taxidermy. And first of all, just an aside, one of the things that I think makes Norman such a tragic character is the fact that, like, he is so sweet and gentle when he is just himself in the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's very unassuming.
Right.
And very kind.
And one of the and he makes, like, taxidermy, which in any other horror movie would be, like, immediate red flag. Like, that's a scary man. He makes it seem so gentle. Like, he's very much like, I don't like to taxidermy beasts because they don't look the same. I really like birds because, like, they just look free. And, like, he just makes it so gentle. And
because like they were already peaceful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it just seems... again, like I think it makes your heart hurt for him, even though ultimately you can tell suspense. You know what's gonna happen.
Right.
She's alone in this motel with this man and his creepy mother. But like, yeah, it definitely does seem like, and it plays into the part where that he's the victim up until the very end, you know.
And I think in a way he is the victim the
Definitely.
entire time, because Norma is like the overarching villain here in this story. She's overbearing and mean, and what's the word I'm looking for? English. Give me words. I almost said endearing. I'm like, fuck no, that
No,
ain't the
but
word.
She created him. Like, she is the reason that
Yeah.
he is the way that he is. So she is definitely the villain. She's abusive. Like,
Right, and he's sick,
yes.
and he doesn't realize, and because he was isolated, you know, he wasn't able to be properly like treat. Although you know, like it's a tragic thing. He is a villain, though.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, there's no...
He's
there's
a
no
bad
doubt about it.
dude, even if it's not his fault.
Right.
Through all of it, though, runs a successful business.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, successful, not so much. But business,
But the highway being moved.
that's true. It's
Yeah.
it's not his fault that it's not successful.
Right, but he also, to your point, like, he doesn't go and like try and start a new, but he's content being isolated.
Yeah, he is. I mean, a boy's best friend and his mother.
Yeah,
And in
who's like rotted and dead, and
Well, but in his mind, she's not.
yeah, that's
his mind,
right.
she's still
That's
around.
true.
The other like really tragic line from that scene that I think about a lot is when they're talking about the cages of the birds and how everybody has a cage, and he says, "I was born in mine. I don't mind it anymore." And she goes, "Oh, you should." And he goes, "I do. I just say I don't." Like, yes, he's isolated, and yes, on one hand, it's like, okay, well, a boy's best friend is his mother. Like, he's got her, but he does want to get out. He knows he's trapped. And, like, we, in that moment, are taking that line to mean, like, he was born in this kind of trapped relationship with his mother. But I think reality is what he means, and what we later understand is, like, he was born with a mind that is splitting in this way, and
Right.
that is, like, trapping him, and he can't leave. I mean, that's not something he can just get out of. Even if he were to, like, leave his mother, he wouldn't be able to leave his mind.
Right.
So,
And something that I think is really interesting about Psycho, even on a rewatch, is like you follow Marion Crane for the first hour or so of the movie, and she gets spoiler alert, just like cut me up and fuck me up in the shower scene.
Right.
This infamous scene. Your protagonist is yeeted off the film halfway through, and now it's Norman's film.
yeah, absolutely.
And you root for Norman for a lot of it.
Yeah. Because the whole time, I mean, unless you know the twist, which of course most modern audiences watching it do.
Right.
But if you don't know the twist, the whole time, and even if you do, I mean, because again, he's kind of sympathetic. They really do a
And the
great
movie
job.
holds up well.
Yes, they really do a great job of painting him as sympathetic. The whole time you're like, this poor boy feels
Right.
like he has to, like,
Clean up his mother's mess.
mother's mess, and he's just trying to do right by her, and like on a
Right.
very real level in his mind he is, like, that is genuinely what he is doing. It's not like he's hiding behind a facade, or it's not like the plot twist is he's dressing up as his mother to blame her for anything. He genuinely believes that's what's happening.
And then at the end of the movie, he's no longer there.
Right, exactly.
The mother persona has taken over. And something I think is really interesting is the scene where Norman is hiding Marion's car in the swamp.
Mm-hmm.
There's this moment where the car kind of stops sinking, and Norman takes like a breath, and then it starts sinking again, and then he releases, and is able to, you know.
Yeah.
But like, you're like in that moment, even if you've seen the movie 100 times, that moment's so good. It's just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh, good. You know?
Yeah. Just backtracking a little bit to
Sure.
before Marion dies. I think one of the most compelling parts of it is when she feels comfortable enough with him to reveal, I'm going back to Phoenix tomorrow and my name is Miss Crane, which is different from what she put in the log. She put in the log a fake
Marie
name.
Samuels.
And then she put Los Angeles.
Right.
And I think that moment, I mean, there's a couple moments where you start to see the switch in Norman. But that moment, I think, is a really underrated one because it really feeds into the idea that his mother had that women are tricksters and women are liars. And I think in that moment, he can reconcile his attraction to her with, like, he can almost get over his attraction because he's like, mother is right. Look at that. There it is. So I think that's for sure a, like, very underrated little scene in there.
Right. And I think it's interesting just kind of talking about mommy relationships in horror movies. There's a reason why this is like the ultimate Mother's Day horror movie.
Yeah.
Other than like Mother's Day. But I haven't seen Mother's Day, so I can't talk about it. All I know is it exists.
I just want to do an aside really quick. We both have really good relationships with our moms. This is not like projection. Just want to put that out there.
Speak for yourself. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Dang.
Love you, mommy.
Love you, Mom.
Yeah.
She's not listening to this episode. She hates horror movies.
Mine is.
Well, of course she is.
Yeah. My mom watches horror movies with me all the time.
I know.
It's awesome. But no,
Your mom watches horror movies with all of us all the time.
yeah, that's true. That's true. We've had a couple, yeah. But anyways, no, with Psycho, I think it's interesting. So we're doing Mommy March, right? Mm-hmm. When we established this theme, Psycho was there right away. And the mother's not even in the movie.
I know. It's really interesting that when you think of, if I were to ask any person who's ever watched a decent amount of horror, what's the movie you think of when you think of mommy issues in horror? Yeah. You're gonna say Psycho. Yeah. It's like that's the one. I mean, that's really, but yeah, she's not a character. She does not exist in this movie. I know she exists in some of the sequels / prequels / Bates Motel, but like, she is dead, long dead before this movie begins.
Have you read the book?
I have read excerpts of the book.
Do you know if she's alive in the book at any point? Or is she dead the whole time?
I believe she is in flashbacks. I've seen some scenes where, like, you get more information about her and her relationship with Norman's father, but you don't get, like, she's not really...
Okay, I was curious because I have not read the book.
One thing that I find really interesting is something that I can't find much on, and maybe I'm just, like, missing a murder, but they talk about how there's 2 girls who went missing, and at the very end, when they're talking to the psychiatrist, I don't remember, whichever one. Yeah. They're talking to the shrink. And then she says something, like, the mother persona says something when they're zooming in on Norman's face about, like, he would have said, I killed what I did to those 2 girls or whatever. And I don't know that that's really ever explored or talked about.
There's a throwaway line when Sam Loomis and what's the sister's name? Lila Crane, which we are just now mentioning Sam Loomis and Lila Crane, who are very important to this movie.
Like, essential. They're just not part of really the mommy plot, so it's kind of hard to, like...
The mommy plot! But, no, that's fair. And there's just so much to talk about this movie.
Right.
Like, fucking Arbogast.
Oh my god, yeah.
What kind of name is Arbogast?
I don't know. That's why they killed him.
That's why he fell.
It had nothing to do with the fact that he was trying to find Marion. It's because his name was fucking Arbogast.
How'd he make it through life that long?
I don't know.
Anyways, that was our
This is now an Armagast hate podcast.
Our weekly roast section, where we roast the fuck out of whichever random character. We got to remember to do that now.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, Arbogast. What the fuck? Anyways, he's not even a bad character. Just what is that name?
Yeah.
What was I saying, Lisa?
There's a throwaway line when Sam and Lila are looking for her.
Well, they're visiting the sheriff deputy, and he says something like 2 missing girls.
Yeah, so that's kind of it's really interesting. I don't know if that's explored in the sequels at all, but like
Maybe it is in the book.
Maybe. I find it really fascinating because it's like that makes me wonder. Again, obviously, we're led to believe that Norman is the one doing all of this.
And, like, Marion Crane was not the first.
Right. It does lead me to believe, though, it makes me wonder, was Norma alive during that time? Did she have anything to do with convincing him of that? Or was it past that? Was it after she died and he had started the split?
I don't think the movie explicitly states anything.
No, I
can't read.
It's a pondering.
So I don't know what the book says on it.
I have to read the book.
I can't read.
I said I'll have to read
it.
Thank you. I can tell you about it.
Thank you.
That's my job. I'm an English teacher, if you guys don't know. So, like, I'm going to do all the reading on this podcast.
Me fail English? That's impossible.
Austin's smarter than he looks.
I fucking love The Simpsons. I'm not doing a Ralph Wiggum voice, though.
You and producer Jeremy could absolutely do a Simpsons podcast.
I thought you were about to say we could do a Ralph Wiggum voice. I'm like, I just said I can't. Maybe a couple years ago when I was but a lad, but...
A couple years ago?
I'm a man now.
A couple years ago?
I talk low.
You've been a man for like 40 of your years.
Girl, I'm 30.
That's fair.
My back just like cracks into a million pieces.
I know, I'm like feeling the back pain.
Yeah, stop it.
Sorry.
You're supposed to be
I'm like young and spry and 27.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, speaking who's not young and spry because they're dead, Norma Bates. Sorry, that was like the worst transition. I've been podcasting for a couple of years. I've had worse transitions.
I was going to say, there has to have been worse transitions. I think we've had worse transitions on podcasts we've done together.
Hell yeah. Was that a hell yeah? Whatever.
But no.
But no, I think my interpretation of it is Norman killed those girls after the mother. I think it's the way I kind of understood it, and I could be wrong, but the way I kind of understood it was Norman kills his mother and her lover first.
Yes. Okay.
And because he committed matricide, that broke his brain even further. Like, he was already on this path.
Right, because he is institutionalized at one point when she is alive. She does mention that at the end of the movie. But yeah, I think that makes sense to me. Because, yeah, I think they do talk about him killing her and having to reconcile with that. So that makes sense. And
I got to say this real quickly. Psycho 2's really interesting.
Okay.
Psycho 2's pretty good. And it takes some swings. It's really, really interesting. Psycho 2 is also much better than it should be. Mm-hmm. So, I have a lot of great things to say about Psycho 2 and Psycho 4.
Nice. We'll have to do a follow-up.
Yeah. Mommy March 2.
Mommy March 2.
The Mommy, the Marcher.
Mother's May.
Mother's May.
Whatever we do in 2026.
Muggest August.
We're recording this at almost 10 p.m. It's possible that it's getting to that point where we're about to get silly goofy.
Silly goofy up in here. Up in here. So, let's move on, I guess, because we could talk about mommies.
here's the thing, is I am glad that we're doing this as episode 1 because I have a feeling that we're going to come back to Psycho in our future episodes to do some compare and contrast because it is kind of the prototype for this type of movie.
And it's so influential on horror.
Exactly, which I think leads us to, like, its greater impact on culture, but I definitely think, especially with our episode 2 pick, I've already made some parallels that I'm excited to talk about. Again,
Parallels.
you have to listen to episode 2.
Which is next week, guys.
Yep.
Unless you're listening to this and both episodes are already... I don't know when people are listening to this.
The future.
The future.
It's fine.
But I'm kind of looking at our notes. Mm-hmm. And I'm not calling you out. I just think this is really funny. And Lisa did a great job on these notes. She fucking killed it. But for our impacts on culture segment, there's just a line that says girls who die.
That is a trope.
But like
it's
just
a trope.
A funny way.
That's fair. I could have done the other name for the trope, which is women in refrigerators.
Huh?
That is a literary term that was coined in the 70s, and it means a woman who faces disproportionate harm or violence.
So have you seen Jurassic World?
Yes.
Is that, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
She didn't deserve that.
No.
In case people haven't watched Jurassic World, which is 10 years old this year.
God, really?
2015, 2025. The first female death in the Jurassic Park series involves Claire's assistant, Zara, who is trying to catch up with the 2 main boys, and she finds them, and she's like, hey, don't just stand there. And as she's just standing there, gets picked up by a pteranodon who flies her all the way to, like, the little ocean thingy, and they drop her in the water, and then, like, one of them swoops up to get her, and as it's struggling to lift her, both the pteranodon and poor Zara just get fucking annihilated by the Mosasaurus. Mm-hmm. Anyways, you said women who get disproportionately harmed, and I just thought of that.
Absolutely.
As an example.
So, like, she starts out this, like, I mean, like, Marion is the prototype. We obviously have final girls, which are a different prototype, but before there were final girls, there were girls who died. And it's just this trope of women in horror who would die these particularly violent deaths. Like, I'm thinking in Scream, the garage door scene. I'm thinking...
Probably the Terrifier franchise.
Okay.
Terrifier 1. You haven't seen them.
Nope.
So, you got that to look forward to.
I know. Sarah Michelle Gellar and I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Okay. I'm sure we can think of...
I mean, like, a million. There's a million.
Yeah.
I'm just, you know.
Also, this isn't quite that trope, but I think these go hand in hand. Psycho starts the... I don't know if there's enough of these for it to be a trope, but kind of like the killing off your most famous actor, actress early in the movie. Scream? Yeah, yep. Scream's big on that. 2014 Godzilla.
Yes.
Did it. Like, the whole marketing campaign was, spoiler alert, for an over 10 years old movie, 2014 Godzilla. The whole marketing campaign was based around Bryan Cranston.
Right.
And he gets killed off halfway through. Mm-hmm.
He is a girl who died.
That's a Psycho twist.
Yeah.
So, and there are more, but, like, yeah, Scream, I think, would be the best.
I mean, it's definitely the biggest example, and that is very heavily taken from Psycho, so, like, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and we got to address this real quick. Loomis.
Of course.
Sam Loomis, Psycho. Dr. Samuel Loomis, Halloween. Billy Loomis, Scream.
Yeah. There's a lot of homages to this movie, obviously. I mean, we talked about it earlier when we talked about how we got introduced to Psycho. in terms of the famous shower scene. But yes, like, I didn't know, obviously, that Billy Loomis was, because I saw Scream first.
Sure.
I didn't know that Billy Loomis was named after Sam Loomis, was an homage to Sam Loomis. And so that was really interesting for me to find out. And I think it's, again, we'll talk more about this if we get to Scream. But really, like, the interesting and unique thing about Scream is that the whole thing, like I said, is a love letter to, like, horror cinema.
Yeah, so there's so much Halloween influence on Scream.
Yeah.
And there's so much Psycho influence on Scream, and there's so much Psycho influence on Halloween. So not only do you get the indirect Psycho influence because of Halloween on Scream, you get the direct Psycho. Like, when Billy Loomis reveals himself as one of the Ghostface killer, he turns around and goes, "We all go a little mad sometimes." Shoots fucking Randy Meeks, and he goes, "Anthony Perkins, Psycho." Like, he couldn't wait to use that line.
He was pretty pumped about that one.
Yeah, and I get it. That's a great line. We all go a little mad sometimes. Oh my God, Psycho fucking rules.
It really does.
So, before we go into our superlatives, our Sam Loomitatives,
you tried your best. That's what matters.
Do you got any final academic thoughts about Psycho?
I really think, I mean, it's something I think we're going to come back to all month. Like, I really do think we're going to have a lot of comparisons to say. It is the blueprint for a lot of things. Obviously, mommy issues, movies, psychological thrillers, slasher flicks. It was just so fun to be able to, like, watch this movie through this lens at this point.
And rewatching it, I didn't forget because it's, like, just one of the great movies. It feels like a movie.
It really does.
But I kind of did forget how incredible the cinematography is.
Yes.
Like, this film looks amazing. Hot take, that Alfred Hitchcock guy knows how to shoot a picture.
Yeah. I know, it's crazy. Really underrated guy.
But I think Psycho's fantastic. I did log it on my Letterboxd. So I gave it 5 stars. What'd I say? Pull up your Letterboxd because I want to, if you logged it.
Of course I did. I've started to log them now because we talked about it.
Hell yeah. So what I gave it 5 stars and a heart, and I said, okay, I'm sorry, but that dude was asking for his money to get stolen. Marion did nothing wrong.
I said, gorgeous film, gorgeous score, Norma Bates, emotional incest queen, with a little crown emoji.
I love that. So, yeah, iconic.
So I think now we're going to transition into our superlatives. This is something that's part of the new format that we decided on. We just have a couple of questions we're going to talk about, debate, that kind of stuff.
And let us know what you guys think of these, because we might add some, we might remove some. We're just testing them out. We're just being silly guys.
Yeah, if you guys have any suggestions at all, please do.
Or don't. We're not your boss.
Do it.
So, first one. Who would we save if we could save any character in this film?
Would you like to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I could go first, and I'll tell you it's not fucking Arbogast.
That's fair. Fuck that guy.
I don't even know why. Like, I had no strong, like, feelings towards him watching the movie. It's just today, I'm like, I woke up and I chose violence.
Listen, okay.
This guy in particular.
This isn't an aside, because I have a feeling that the people who listen to this podcast and people who are Detroit sports fans might be two separate circles, at least in the very specific way that I'm about to say. Last fall, the Detroit Tigers made the playoffs kind of unexpectedly.
Yeah.
And producer Jeremy and I went to a game. We spent all of our life savings on a game in the playoffs.
Worth it.
And we were playing the Guardians, and there is an outfielder named Stephen Kwan. And I didn't know who Stephen Kwan was going into that game. But I left that game with so much hatred for that man just because of two hecklers who were sitting in front of us telling Stephen Kwan the whole time that his mother never loved him.
Wait, so why do you hate Stephen Kwan?
Because he's a guardian. He's on the other team.
Oh.
It was like osmosis. They hated him so badly that now
okay.
I hate him.
I thought you were hating, like, the hecklers.
Oh, no.
And then you were victim blaming.
No, I, like, feel like they just, like, convinced me so well that Stephen Kwan's the worst man on the planet.
So this is our purpose in life, to convince everyone that Arbogast is the worst movie character.
Yeah, exactly. So now I just feel that way about Arbogast. Sorry, Stephen Kwan, if you're listening. I know you're a big fan of the show.
Yeah.
I apologize, but also
You're better than Arbogast.
You're better than Arbogast, but it's like all of the characters and people in the world, and then you, and then Arbogast.
I feel so bad.
Hitler.
Arbogast does not
Hitler
deserve.
is
But Arbogast is kind
underneath.
of a dick, too.
Exactly.
He's a PI.
I want to be clear. Hitler's underneath all those people, including Arbogast. He's bad.
Yeah.
I feel like it's important that we stand on the controversial issues.
Okay.
We have a stance.
Okay.
Anyway.
Is the worst person in history worse than this random fictional
Private
character from a
history.
1960s horror film?
Who would you save, Austin?
Who would I save? Like I said, not Arbogast. I'll save my girl, Marion Crane.
That's fair.
She did nothing wrong. She's kind of a baller.
She really is. She was just like, I hate this dude. I'm taking his $40,000
Yeah.
and I'm getting out of here.
And then, like, she gets shit done.
Mm-hmm.
And the one dude, this is the first time the customer ever high-pressured the salesman.
He's so funny. I would save Norman, which I understand is controversial, but, like,
He's just a baby.
he really is. He just, like, if he had gotten proper psychological care, he would not be a mass murderer. And that's how I feel.
I'm just gonna say this right now. If we ever cover Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which may happen, maybe I know. I would save Leatherface.
Fair. Okay.
So I don't think you're too far off.
I wouldn't save Ed Gein. I want to be very clear. It really sounds like we're like pro Ed Gein here. That's not what I'm saying.
No, we like the fictional
versions of him. You know?
Yeah, but like because with better writing, Norman Bates could have been. No, I don't want to say it like that because the writing of Psycho is pretty solid.
I was gonna say it's not better writing. It would have actually been much worse writing if he was saved.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be a story.
It wouldn't. It would be nothing. It would be, oh, this man has this psychological thing. We got him the proper care, and now he's living a full life, and that would be nothing. But yeah.
But no, I think that's a great. I think that's a great save. What is your favorite scare of the film?
Obvious one, it's the shower scene. I just think it's so iconic. It is so good. I mean, now I'm really tempted to say Arbogast being pushed down the stairs, but
is that a scare or is that just like a crowd? Well, wait, do you remember the Oscars a couple of years ago where the crowd cheer moment?
Yes.
And then they fucking gave it to Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah, that was really a lot.
No disrespect to that movie, but that was just really funny.
Yeah. I think, I mean, it's iconic, but it's iconic for a reason.
Yeah, like, it's intense.
Especially, showering is such it can be a pensive thing, it can be a meditative thing, it can be just like a procedure that you do, like daily habit. It's not somewhere you're really necessarily expecting danger. I guess maybe a little more now that this is in the cultural zeitgeist, but like at the time, I assume it's really not where you...
Well, you're not expecting the protagonist of the film to go when she goes. And it's also like the most vulnerable state. That's what's scary.
Right. You're not, when you're in the shower too, you're not like, your lights on. Like, it's not like, oh, dark, shadowy room or whatever. You're just taking care of some stuff. You know, you're just like washing your body. And yeah, you're right. It's like the most vulnerable state you can be in. And
Bernard Herrmann just has the most violent score you could possibly hit. Like, it's a fantastic scene. My favorite scare, I'm going to say the reveal that Norman is Norma.
Fair.
When she turns around, when she turns I'm people can't see this because this is an audio platform, but I'm doing air quotes with my fingies. When she turns Norma around and sees it's like a 10-year-old corpse, and then Norman just runs in with this like murderous smile. Like that freaked me out when I first, and I was in college.
Yeah.
And that freaked me out really hardcore when I first saw it because I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know about that twist.
Right.
It blew my mind.
I did know about it going in the first time, so that wasn't really necessarily a shock to me. But even not being a shock, like, do you know how hard it is for a plot twist to not, like, to have a person in the audience know about a plot twist and for it still to emotionally impact you? Like, that's how hard this movie hits.
And
great.
I would argue that Bernard Herrmann goes even a little harder in that moment.
Yes.
And and I think what sells that scare for me is when Lila, when she turns the corpse around, she gives this great horror movie scare or scream, horror movie scream. She slaps the light bulb and gives this great scream, and then when Norman comes in and she turns around, she goes from like great horror movie scream to like just real fear.
Yeah.
I don't know how Alfred directed that. I don't know what he told her or where she had to go dig deep down, but that looks like a real fear.
It really does.
And that sells that moment for me.
Definitely. Especially considering, and I actually, controversial opinion, really like old movie acting. I know it's a little more dramatized. I know it's a little more,
theatrical?
Theatrical. Yeah, that's a good word for it. I really like old movie acting. However, the scream, the iconic scream when she turns around the mother, that's horror. That's old movie acting. That whatever she was channeling, that's like new movie acting. That's like real.
That's real.
That's you're digging deep for something. So yeah, no, I totally agree. I feel like that brings me to my Tony Todd Award for movie MVP.
Well, I want to kind of explain this a little bit before we go ahead with this. So the superlative I kind of want to introduce is we want to do what we're calling the Tony Todd Award for movie MVP in honor of one of my favorite actors, not just in horror, but just actors. Tony Todd was he was that guy.
Yeah.
In any movie he's in, he was the MVP. Like, obviously Candyman, right? But
yes, but
Final Destination, like, he's in that movie for fucking 3 minutes, and he's, like, the best part.
Right. He is truly, I mean, the standout in any movie that he's
right. And, have you ever seen Michael Bay's The Rock?
Yes.
He's in that.
Shockingly, I have seen that movie. Yes.
And he's just like, I want my fucking money. And it's so cool. And, like, to hold your own in a movie with fucking Nicolas Cage, Sean Connery, Ed Harris. Yeah. The dude's the MVP. Yeah. And Tony Todd passed away a couple months ago, 2024. So, yeah, that's a bummer. But I truly think he was one of the greats. And always an MVP. So I want to do this kind of fun superlative in his honor. So the Tony Todd Award for movie MVP, it could be a cast member, it could be a crew member, it could be a character, maybe an aspect. Like, we'll play with it, Yeah. So who are you giving your first Tony Todd Award?
So I'm giving mine to, and it really led in very well. I'm giving mine to Vera Miles, who plays Lila Crane. I think character-wise, she never gives up on finding out what happened to Marion. She's a very headstrong and determined and kind of modern woman, especially for a movie that takes place was filmed in 1960. But also, as we talked about, that final scene, she just really holds her own. And she is, in her own way, even though she's kind of a smaller role in the movie, a final girl. Yeah. And I think, I just think her acting was absolutely phenomenal all the way through, but particularly in that scene, as we already kind of talked about. So.
Right. No, I think that's a great pick. Sometimes, I mean, there's so many people you can give this award to, but I just gotta go with my heart and just say Anthony Perkins.
For sure.
For me, he is the MVP. He the range that he just delivers, he on a like a flip of the switch, he can be so sinister and like, but he's so unassuming and he's so gentle.
I think that is
but he's dangerous.
That is something that is really just shows his range, because it is so difficult to be like the villain and to play. I mean, that last scene where it zooms in on his face is so disturbing. But truly, I mean, if you don't know what's coming, him in that opening scene, he is so innocent and so like there's not a hint of suspicion of this guy could be anything harmful. And I think that is really, really hard to do. So I definitely agree with your pick.
And like just his acting in the bird parlor scene, when he starts off so nice, but then he just gets, as they talk more about his mother and stuff, he just gets slowly more and more scary, really. Yeah. And he's getting angry with Marion. Like, why should I leave her? You know, what do you know about caring about anybody? It's like, damn dude. Yeah. Damn dude. You know, like, right. But Janet Leigh deserves a lot of credit. Mm-hmm. She carries the movie on her back. Yeah, until she passes the torch, so to speak. Bernard Herrmann, I'd give a shout out to. So, yeah, Psycho. There's a lot of MVPs, but I would give my personal pick to Anthony Perkins.
Beautiful. All right, is the score better than Jaws? Better than Jaws, superlative.
So every week we'll talk about the score of the movie because we're both music nerds. We have to, and I don't know. I just kind of said it as a joke. Is the score better than Jaws? And then Lisa was like, we have to do that. And I was like, fuck. Because most of the time, I'm just going to say no.
So here's the context and backstory for this one. Austin and I have had a long-standing feud about the composer John Williams.
It's not a feud. I'm right, you're wrong.
I understand that most people will feel that way. I understand that I'm in the minority, but that's because most people are uneducated on music. I don't believe that John Williams is a bad composer. He's objectively not. He has iconic film scores, and I know that. And Jaws is one of them. Jaws is probably my favorite, honestly. Do I believe that he is the teensiest bit overrated because he takes a ton of influence from composers who have come before him, and some of his scores are just carbon copies of Holst? Yes. Yes, absolutely I do. However, Austin believes he is the second coming of Christ.
Because he is.
So now we have to do the better than Jaws superlative. I predict...
Which is a little unfair, though. Like, Jaws is a very high standard.
I predict that many weeks he will say no, I will say yes, and then it will just be a segue into us talking about the music. And that's how I predict this is going to go, but we'll see.
But anyways...
So, better than Jaws?
I actually have to say yes.
Agree. I think the thing, though, is this is the prototype. You know what I mean? This is the horror movie soundtrack.
And Jaws does take a lot of tricks from Psycho.
Crazy how I just said he did that. Anyway.
Okay, but you watch next week's film, so, like...
Yep.
There are more egregious stealers of Psycho.
Oh, yes. This is, I mean, trust me, next week's film is... just this 2.0. But this one thing that I will say is not even just like the actual music, but the placement of the music I find really interesting. The music is so suspenseful. I mean, obviously everybody's heard the iconic like re, but like the music is really suspenseful when she's alone, which is normal for horror movies. Yeah. But again, Marion spends a lot of the beginning of this movie surrounded with really creepy and uncomfortable men, and it's always silent. Not even just like pleasant music, just no music. When she's with these men and in these uncomfortable situations, it's always when she's just alone. And I think that's a really interesting dichotomy to kind of lull us into this false sense of security, especially with Norman. There's no hints in the score. Usually lots of hints in the score for what you're supposed to be afraid of. no hints that Norman is a danger when it comes to the score. And I think that's really, really masterfully done.
And it's a violent score.
Yes.
And it's all strings. Mm-hmm. Bernard Herrmann had to work with a little less of a budget, so he didn't have like the sweeping orchestra he's used to writing for. So this isn't Vertigo, which I think is one of the great scores of all time. And obviously I think Jaws is one, especially for horror.
When I think Jaws, I think horn. I think French horn particularly.
I think cellos.
That's fair too. For sure. Like the iconic.
Right. But there's a lot. Like, tuba.
Like that's all, and I think.
But that's a sweeping orchestra.
Exactly. And I think that doing so amazingly and so iconically with what little he had was really, really masterful.
And like the prelude and
keep saying masterful.
And this is the music that plays while she's driving.
Yes.
It's just so good.
It's almost reminiscent of like Wizard of Oz, in a way.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I get that.
Like just in the driving force,
right? Not
necessarily like a 1-to-1.
There's not that many scores that drive the way the Psycho Prelude does.
Correct.
It's a violent score. It's an eerie score, and the ending of the movie, the music there. I think the music's doing a lot of it's the mother monologue. It's Anthony Perkins' stare. It's the camera like just lingering, slowly zooming in, and it's like Bernard Herrmann's like eerie chords and string shit. I think that's the technical term for that. I'm a trumpet player. I don't
string
know this
shit.
shit. Yeah, string shit. It's just perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So, I hate to say it, like, right off the bat, episode 1, I don't think there is a horror score better than Jaws. But I'm saying yes for Psycho, because Psycho came first and Jaws borrowed from it.
That's fair.
And also, I'm going to say yes to films I think that are on the same level.
Fair.
Just because I want to give, and Psycho is one of the greats.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Psycho is a fantastic score.
Mm-hmm.
So top 5 of all time probably for horror.
I agree. All
right, the last question.
I wonder what the last question could be.
How much do you hate Arbogast? No.
Scale of 1 to 10.
No. So the show's called Would You Die? Mm-hmm. I gotta ask, if you were in the movie Psycho, would you die?
Yes. I don't censor myself to appease men.
But you know who else doesn't? Lila Crane.
That's true. She's not, she's not around Norman enough, really, to, like, alone with Norman enough for that, too, I think.
Right, because Sam was alone.
Because Sam is there, and Sam spends,
right.
I mean, like, obviously, she would have been a goner probably if Sam had not, like, come after him. However, I think, for the most part, if Lila had been in the place of Marion, I think Lila's a little more headstrong. I think Marion is very much like, I know what I can do to, like, survive social situations around creepy men and just get out of them. I don't think Lila handles it the same way. I won't say she handles it better or worse. I just think she would handle it differently.
Yeah.
And I think she might have been a goner a lot sooner.
That's fair. But I also think Marion could take Norman in a fight.
For sure. Absolutely.
Like, Norman's kind of a dweeb, and Marion's tough.
Mm-hmm.
It's just mommy Bates.
Yeah.
Coming at you when you're least suspecting, at your most vulnerable. It wasn't fair. Marion did nothing wrong. Okay. So, you would die.
Would you die?
I don't think so. I'll tell you why. I'm a man.
I mean, like, yeah.
Like, objectively, Norman Bates goes after women, and then some of you are probably thinking, Arbogast is a dude. Arbogast got slashed across the face and fell down the stairs. Well, Arbogast was going up into places he was explicitly told not to go.
I was going to say, Arbogast fucked around and found out, and that's the problem.
And I just wouldn't do that.
Fair.
Hey, can I go up there? No? Okay, bye. And then I'm gone from the movie, and I lived.
Yeah.
So I got two things going for me. I'm a dude, and I'm not going to fuck around and find out. Because that's the thing. Because, like, Norman Bates could kill anybody. It's just really dependent on if he gets the jump on you.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, Marion could take Norman.
I completely agree. I think he relies on catching people off guard.
Right.
And he's able to do it. The advantage he has is his unassuming nature sometimes.
Right,
Like,
and that's the scary thing about it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, if I didn't know who Norman Bates was, right? And, like, I wouldn't suspect a thing. I would survive through pure dumb luck. And for, not fucking putting my nose where it shouldn't be. But, like, if I was in Marion's position, I would live because I'm not, a woman.
Right.
And that's who he goes after.
Mm-hmm.
So, because, like, Marion could beat me in a fight. So it's not anything to do with strength. It's just everything to do with who Norman goes after. And I am not that.
Yeah, I agree.
So, this was so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I fucking love Psycho.
Me too. I'm really excited to kind of see how the other Mommy March contenders compare to Psycho in terms of, like, parallels and such.
Well, do you want to say what we're covering next week?
Absolutely. So next week we will be covering another horror classic, Carrie, 1976.
Fuck yeah.
I'm really excited to get into that. If I go too much into it, I'll give away the whole episode, so I'm just going to leave it there.
Alrighty. So, yeah, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for just bearing with us during the hiatus. I needed it. Your boy was tired. But I'm glad to be back. I'm glad Woody Die is back. Thank you for joining us. If this is the first time you listened to this show, thank you so much. I hope you return. And, I got to do all that podcast bullshit. Like, share, subscribe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm sure this will be on there somehow. I don't know. I'm making this up as I go.
You can follow us pretty much everywhere on social media at Would You Die Show.
Yep. Where can the people find you, should you want to be found?
You can find me at Letterboxd. I'm trying to be more active on there at Whimsawillow. WHIMSI Willow. You can find me on Instagram at Whimsawillow. WHIMSI Willow. And you can find me on Blue Sky at Whimsawillow. WHIMSI Willow.
You can find me on every social media as at Austin M. Torres. That's pretty consistent. I'm trying to think if I got any updates for everyone. Oh well, that's editing Austin's job. So, I am Austin.
I'm Anneliese.
Thank you for listening, and try not to die.